Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hari ini Madam akan evaluate kerja yang pertama untuk minggu ini iaitu election process in Malaysia. Okay, so here we are.
Madam Eva, in this video, we are going to present about the election process in Malaysia organized by Malaysian Election Commission. This is our group members. Our group members consist of 3 people, which is Muhammad Syarul Ashraf bin Suhaidi, Muhammad Haziq bin Azmin, and Ahmad Muizzuddin bin Muhammad Yaakob. My name is Muhammad Haziq bin Azmin, and I will present about introduction, step 1 of election process, and step 2 of election process. As we know, election is an important process to select and choose the right person or candidates for an important position, no matter for the country or any organization. And without any discrimination, all people have the right to vote during the election and choose whoever they want. This gives power to the people or citizen to choose their leader. The important element of election are electoral division, voters, candidates, and election process. In Malaysia, there are 2 levels of election, which is federal level, which is the main election, and state level. In Malaysia Election Commission, or also known as Suruhanjaya Pilihan Raya Malaysia, is the one who is responsible to handle all the election process in Malaysia. Malaysia Election Commission was founded on September 4, 1957 in accordance with the Article 114 of the Federal Constitution. The function of Malaysian Election Commission is to study and redelineate parliamentary and state electoral boundaries not less than every 8 years after the date of previous study. The first step of election process is Election Commission special meeting and the issuance of WRIT. Before the election started, the parliament must be dissolved first. Dissolution of parliament is based on clause 3 of the Article 55 of the Federal Constitution, which states that the parliament can be dissolved after 5 years from the date of its first sitting or at any point prior to that. Then, Election Commission will receive an official notice from the Speaker about the dissolution. After Election Commission receive all the notice, they will set a date for a special meeting to discuss important dates such as date of issuance date and election notice, nomination day, early voting day, polling day, electoral roll use, and related preparation. Special meeting for Election Commission usually will discuss about the important event for the general election, which is the issuance of writs, nomination of candidates, election campaign, voting, official aggregation of votes, and announcement of election results. After the special meeting being held, Election Commission will issue an election writ in accordance with Section 12 of the Election Act 1958 to the managing officer of each constituency contested. A writ election is a document that orders an election to be held. Election writ is then important to inform the important things of the election to the responsible officer to start their work and make sure the election can be run smoothly. After the issuance of the election writ, an election notice will be gazetted and displayed in the public location to public to review. After that, they will proceed to step 2, which is naming of the candidates on nomination day. Nomination day or naming of the candidates means that the day that being set by the Election Commission for the candidates to submit their nomination papers to the election officer. Usually, the nomination day shall not be less than 4 days from the date of publication of the election notice. During the 4 days gap, the qualified candidate will prepare all the document and candidate's nomination paper. All the required qualification to become a candidate for House of Representative election is a Malaysian citizen and resident in the Federation at the time of nomination and must not be less than 21 years old of age during the nomination day. For State Legislative Assembly elections candidates, the required qualification are a Malaysian citizen and resident in the state where they wishes to compete for and must not less than 21 years of age during the nomination day. On the nomination day being set by the Election Commission between the time of 9 AM to 10 AM, the managing officer will receive nomination forms from the candidate, proposer, or supporters, or all 3. The candidate that want to run in the election, they are required to pay deposit. If they are failed to pay the deposit, the nomination paper will state as incomplete and the election officer will not receive the nomination paper from the candidates. Then they must submit other form, which is statutory declaration form, and this form need to be stamped at the stamp duty office. The managing officer will declare the candidates eligible to contest or not eligible to contest. If one candidate that eligible and the other candidate is not eligible, the managing officer will announce the candidate as the winner without contesting.
My name is Ahmad Musuddin bin Muhammad Yaakob. I'm going to continue our presentations about campaign and voting process. So, campaign process is one of the day or the process that happening before the election day. So, the main purpose of campaign day is to promote the candidates towards their voters and to win their votes. All parties that involved in campaigning activities will abide by all elections law, rules and ethics throughout the election campaign period that began after the candidate declarations. The elections commissions will also like to remind that any campaign activities such as foods, drinks, or money or goods for bribery, influencing voters is an offence under the Elections Offence Act 1954. So it should also be noted that any actions or statement that distracts any voters from exercising their own right to vote freely is also an offence under the same act, in which case in intentional or unintentional actions, threatening actions or statement that develop feelings of abuse, dissatisfactions, using force, violence, or many more bad things towards people. The Elections Commission also warns the candidates to not using government access or abusing government power to win votes. Candidates and also the parties that involved in the activities campaigning should campaign prudently and in accordance campaign ethics that guarantee the harmony of society. Any party who have information or anything evidence of any branches of law by those involved in campaign activities are advised to report the matters to the appropriate authorities. All parties are reminded that any forms, campaign or voting activities are prohibited on polling day. These ones including the social media, so the candidates cannot promote themselves for votes. And the EC also, and we as Malaysians also hope that all parties can abide by the law, rules and ethics of elections campaign to ensure the smooth running of the day and not threaten public order and safety. So next will be the voting process. So the voting process will consist of one individual persons, which is known as voters or electors. So they have a right and qualifications to cast a ballot in elections. In federal constitutions, a person who is eligible to vote is a person who have attained the age of 21 years old. This is worth about years ago, but for nowadays 18 years old are already eligible to vote. So for citizens who reside outside the country, they are allowed to vote by posts such as civil servants, Malaysian students studying abroad, and many more. So the person who are not allowed and disqualified is a person who serving the prisons or unsound mind. So what time for voting? On polling day, the time to vote for most police stations is from 8 AM to 5 PM. However, for rural areas, the EC stipulates that the polling stations will be opened late and closed earlier. What about the place? So, the polling centers might be school buildings, halls, community halls, tents, and more. What about the documents that we need to bring to vote? So the required document is an identity card, either my card or an old identity card. If other documents, if these documents missing or lost, other documents also can be accepted as a proof and identity is an option for what you have. So how to vote? So marking of ballots is usually done by crossing the X. In fact, ballot papers marked with other marks are also still accepted in accordance with the conditions and guidelines set by the Elections Commissions. Although other indications are still accepted, it is up to discretions of the head of the polling station who will decide whether the marking is in the category of accepted votes, doubtful votes, or rejected votes. Before the end part of my presentation, I would like to share you 7 steps to vote. So the first one is enter the entrance when we are allowed by the police. The second one is submit our identifications. And the third one is to move to the front of the second polling clerk. The fourth one is to get a ballot paper from the third polling clerk. And the fifth one is advance to the ballot box and mark the X in the candidate space on our ballot paper, which is select one candidate only. And the sixth one is insert the ballot papers into the respective ballot boxes for the houses, and the last one, leave immediately.
Okay, now I would like to present my part for step 5, which is counting of votes process in Malaysia. This process is enshrined in Election Regulations Act 1981 that provides certain procedures in counting the votes strictly. Under this act, the vote counting process is carried out strictly in accordance with the procedure set and will be monitored by Malaysian Election Commission to ensure the secrecy of the public in selecting the desired candidate will not be known by anyone, including those involved in the counting of votes. There are a number of people involved in this process, and they are allowed to be there during the counting process. So they consist of counting agents, presiding officers, election commission officials, and as well as those with written permission from the election commission. Each candidate of election is allowed to send a representative or agent to monitor the counting process. This coincides with subsection 14 of the Election Offences Act 1954 that allows the candidates to send a representative or agent to monitor the counting process. It is important to ensure that the counting process runs fairly and can avoid any negligence in this election. However, all those involved must comply with the conditions set out in the Election Act so that the counting process on that day runs smoothly and fairly. Okay, next. Basically, there are 2 types of ballot papers. The first one is normal ballot paper, normal. This ballot paper will be used for people in this country, while the right side is poster ballot paper, as you can see right. It's used by Malaysian people who are abroad. The ballot counting process for these 2 types of ballot papers is the same, but there are a few additional procedures for postal ballot papers. Okay, first we will look at the steps in counting process for the ballot papers for the normal ballot paper. When the counting process begins, the agents will be notified so that they are aware of every move that occurs during the counting of votes. After that, the head of the polling station will seal the ballot spots while being monitored by the voting agents present. The process begins by removing the ballot paper from the ballot box and placing it in a tray labeled "Votes Not Counted." The ballot paper will be counted and typed in a total of 10 sheets per bundle. This is intended to make it easier for them to calculate accurately and in an orderly manner. Then the clerk who counts the votes will take the ballot papers one by one while showing the candidates a symbol to voting agent and place in the relevant candidate tray if there is no objection from the voting agent. However, if there is an objection from any voting agent, the ballot paper will be placed in a 3-level doubtful ballot. And the process of recounting the ballot paper of each candidate will be done. Okay. For your information, only once is allowed for the voting agent to apply a repeat counting process. But the head of the polling station or ketua tempat mengundi is allowed at his discretion to conduct a repeat counting of votes more than once to satisfy all parties. Once everything goes smoothly, the head of the polling station will bring the ballot box containing the ballot papers and voting statements to the official counting center. Next, we go for steps in counting process for the poster ballot papers. Okay, each poster voter will send their ballot paper directly to the office of the returning officer, which is located at their respective constituency. Poster ballot envelopes will be opened carefully only on an official voting day and monitored by voting agents representing their party candidates. There are 2 small envelopes. The first one is the ballot paper, and the second is about the voter's personal information, which are contained in the large postal ballot envelope. After they open the envelopes, the poster voter's personal information form will be carefully checked to ensure that it has the ballot paper serial number and complete personal details along with the voter's signature. The ballot paper will be placed in the ballot paper tray when all information is correct and accurate. At this time, the ballot paper will not be opened yet, even if it's rejected due to incomplete information by postal voters. This is because the method used by the Election Commission can guarantee confidentiality of voters, and even it can prevent fraud during this process. Last step in this process is valid ballot papers will be counted carefully, and the winner candidate will be the members of the parliament for general election or assemblyman. Okay, after everything is done, it is thrilling time for the people to find out who will govern the country within 5 years. The announcement of the results will be made by the managing officer for the constituency, and at the same time declare the candidate who gets the majority of votes. The decision is final and cannot be challenged by any party. In fact, it becomes an offense when someone objects to the decision without following the right channel. However, a voting agent or anyone can file an election petition in election court as an objection. If there is no objection, the party that wins a majority votes of 112 out of 222 parliaments will be the government within 5 years. Throughout the vote counting process until the announcement of the results, the Election Commission constantly monitors and ensures that all processes run in accordance with what was planned at the initial stage. Thus, with careful planning and strict procedures in the vote counting process by the Election Commission, it can be implemented with justice and transparency so that the people do not doubt the results. Okay, in conclusion, as a country that practices parliamentary democracy, it is an obligation to hold elections if the time comes in accordance with the established federal constitution, so that the Election Commission is fully responsible for handling and setting the election process. Okay, the summary of steps. It starts by fixing some important matters through a special meeting of the Election Commission after receiving a notification of dissolution of the legislature from the Speaker. And the Election Commission will then send a writ to the managing officer in each constituency before it is officially announced to the public. Then each candidate will campaign according to the procedures after they register through the candidate nomination process. After that, the day came for the people to fulfill their respective responsibilities by choosing the desired leader. Finally, the votes will be counted transparently before the announcement of the candidate who won the majority of votes. While all of these processes may be seen complicated and tedious, They are important to ensure transparency in a democratic system. It also can prevent bad deeds that can tarnish the image of the country, such as corruption, fraud, and a breach of trust. In addition, the people will also get through justice if the election results and proceedings are done transparently, because the voice of the people is very important for the future of the country. Therefore, the Election Commission of Malaysia must maintain and ensure that the procedures in each election process will always be implemented in a transparent and fair manner. So I think that's all from our group. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. So I would like to evaluate your work. Okay. Sekejap. Okay. So the question is, describe the election process in Malaysia organized by Malaysia Election Commission. So I can see how detailed you describe the process. Okay, it's very detailed. I like it how your presentation skill, how your professional attire, and how you make your presentation, because with the pictures it's very, orang kata, convincing dan juga senang kita nak faham, so it's very clear lah. Okay, so okay, kita tengok kepada the rubric process. Okay. Alright, so Syarul Ashraf, Muizuddin, kenapa suara tu macam ni, orang kata macam agak bergema, kan? So delete jap. Okay. Okay, introductions, very good. Okay, key concept, very good. Transitions, okay, transition yang bagi 4 lah kot. Conclusion is very good, okay, by Syahrul. So we can see the importance of the election, and then overall general, I like the presentation, and I would like to give you 5 lah. Okay, so congratulations, very good. Okay, all right. Okay, so we go to the next group. Okay, about the EC, or the agency, the commission that organized the election. Okay, so here we go.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum to Lecturer Madam Fariza binti Johari. Today we will present our report entitled Describe the Election Commission and its function in Malaysia election process. Before that, I will introduce my group member. The first is me, Ahmad Afiq bin Ahmad Kamal, 2020-809-704. Next is Izzat Fahmi bin Aidil Azhar, 2020-2646. And the last one is Muhammad Anaki bin Khairul Anwar, 2020-492132.
Okay, first I will start with introduction. In order to carry out its fundamental functions within and for a competitive political system, the electoral system must be perceived as generally or adequately fair by all relevant social groups and political parties contending for power in order to be effective. The Election Commission ability to perform its duty to the best of its ability will have a significant impact on whether the Malaysian electoral system meet this minimum foundation criterion or fails to do so, as it increasingly becoming the concern. This chapter will first provide evidence to support this claim, and then it will evaluate the Federal Commission position, its performance, and how its performance might be improved. The EC must be able to perform satisfactorily in two aspects of performance, known as functional requisite. One is competency in the performance of its responsibilities. This and other rules establish the framework and constraint within which the EC must operate. Despite this, the EC retains broad and important functions, as well as considerable discretion and initiative, and its performance has the potential to have a significant impact on public confidence in the electoral system. Next is importance of Malaysian Election Commission. The Election Commission, like all other institutions of constitutional government, must operate within a pre-existing framework or legislative regulation. In addition to appropriate constitutional provision, federal statute or legislation passed by Parliament form the basis of this framework. The establishment function and performance of the EC functions of reviewing and delimiting electoral constituencies are primarily addressed in this section. Electoral qualification and the procedure of challenging election are the only two issues directly addressed by the Federal Constitution, which is the only other electoral topic addressed directly by the Constitution. The relevance of the EC is also derived from the discretion that the EC granted under present rules. To effectively carry out its responsibilities, the EC must make decisions on a wide range of issues, many of which entail and in some cases necessitate the exercise of considerable discretion by the EC. Discretion that constitutional amendment have increased in some areas, with simultaneously decreasing it in others. To put it another way, existing regulations do not completely control or program the Election Commission's decision making. As previously said, this issue is critical in understanding the significance of the Election Commission. As a robot like EC, with no discretionary ability or agency, can scarcely be called powerful or significant. Next part is election law. Malaysian election laws tend to be too complex and too scattered. In short, they are not user-friendly to voter and candidate. They are the result of many ad hoc changes to individual election laws and not a comprehensive change that reflects by a schematic approach. By scattered mean that our election laws are found in several places rather than a single document. This statutory instrument purporting to deal with different aspects of our election system are thus known only to those who have a need to handle them, whether lawyer or lay person. Unlike our election laws, one does not have to go on a voyage of discovery to ascertain the land laws of the country. The conduct of an election petition has become a minefield to walk through. There is too much technicality involved. Non-compliance with any of the rules is held to be fatal. Indeed, except for a few, most of the election petitions following the 1919 general election were dismissed on ground of technicality or non-compliance with the rules. It is suggestive not merely of a very strict approach by the court, but also of the general complexity or lack of clarity of the rules contained in the election petition rules 1954.
We can get benefit from the various functions of the Election Commission in Malaysia. Elections are vital in defining constituencies, producing fair and responsible leaders, also selecting the most competent candidate to represent members. The Election Commission formed a secretariat, headed by a secretary who was the chief administrator. The Executive Committee Secretariat enforced the Election Commission policy and decision in conformity with the Federal Constitution. Among the officers and secretarial staff of the Election Commission are Malaysian government servants. Section 3 of the 1988 Election Act requires that all top secretarial officers be officially appointed by the Election Commission before they may commence their duty as a party secretaries. The Election Commission oversees each state election office, headed by the Director of State Election. The election tasks and the obligations are carried out by the Secretariat at both the national and the state level. When the Dewan Raya or the state legislative assemble in the dissolve for a general election, or when an unforeseen vacancy develops, an election must be held to fill it. Article 115 of the Federal Constitution allows the Election Commission to select officers and order to carry out government functions. The Election Commission may design returning officer, assistant managing officer, polling head, polling clerk, and other staff to perform their duty at each polling station, subject to Section 3 of the Election Act 1988, unless otherwise no general elections are held. Simultaneously, across Malaysia, when the state legislatives assemble and the Dewan Raya are dissolved,
Baca je ni.
the Election Commission has 60 days to organize elections so that the people can choose a new representation and administration. The election process has two primary days, candidate nomination and election day. A special meeting was convened soon after to fit the dates. The Election Commission examined a number of considerations when deciding the date, including voter certification, the suitable campaign cycle. For opposing political parties, public safety, public order, weather, and other variables, the Election Commission also analyzed how citizens feel about utilizing their voting right. The Election Commission must determine the date of election letter to the returning officer, the date of publication of election notice, the electoral roll to be utilized in the election, and other issues relating to governance and election process. The Federal Constitution empowers the Election Commission to make any judgment within its jurisdiction. The election budget must be established in advance, and giving top attention since election cannot be conducted smoothly if the budget is insufficient. The Ministry of Finance must be approved the distribution of the election fund in accordance with the Election Commission request. The Election Secretariat begin preparing the election budget by having internal meeting at the state headquarters level as well as state level meeting with the director to produce estimates based on each demand and the general election preparation. Due to the sensitivity of the material or equipment required, certain components of logistic planning, transportation, and equipment have to be purchased outside of the tender or bid phase. Instead, direct negotiation with the provider was required. As a result, the election planning process will be unaffected and the acquisition of election material and equipment will be complete on time and within budget. Section 3 of the Election Act 1988 designated and the returning officer, electoral instrument or supplied to management officer, and the Election Commission is authorized to run the election in the division in which it is named. The polling station supervisor, as known as PPM, is responsible for controlling the polling station directorates and ensuring that the clerk of the voter register (KPDP) do their respective duty at the polling station. To fulfill its commitment, the Election Commission decided the head of the polling station (KTM) as the person in charge of the voting process. The head of the polling place is chosen as per Regulation 12 of the Election Regulation 1981. Voting registration control counter has been installed at each polling location with multiple channels. The checkout clerk is known as Voter Registration Service Clerk (KPDP). They will be chosen in accordance with Regulation 12A of 1981. The polling station employee assists in the voting identification, verification, and subsequently give a slip with the polling place number to voter whose name appear on the polling place register.
Next is voting district. As part of determining the voting channel, the polling place personnel assist in the verification of voter identification and then distribute a slip with the polling place number to voter whose name appear on the voter register at the polling place. Specifically, the EC mandates that in a secure and regulated environment, each voting district has only one voting centre, which can be located in school building or public hall, as specified by the EC. Next is problem of public confidence. Being resulting has ramification for the Election Commission. its performance is bound to elicit interest and response from political parties. This kind of attention is almost never uninterested and is almost always undesired. Maintaining the Election Commission independence would most likely be more manageable if the Commission was subjected to equal power pushes from various and conflicting sources. In reality, the ruling party has utilized its appointment right to ensure that it has an EC that is supportive of its position. As a result, those who lack the ability to influence appointment to the EC or its functioning can criticize and denounce when the EC performance adversely affect their interests. Next is solution. The main problem by far in relation to reform is not the way but the will of the EC and more importantly of UMNO, the undisputed leader of the ruling coalition and main beneficiary of the extant electoral system. They believe that there is completely no will or that no reform is possible is not true. Reform would happen if it were deemed necessary for preventing worsening in public confidence in the electoral system. Furthermore, the number of retired civil servants appointed to the EC should be reduced and more members, especially the chairman, should be appointed from persons with career outside the executive branch of government. Honestly, in appointment also requires attention to the knowledge, capability and dedication that a member would bring to the business of carrying our election. Lastly, for the conclusion, the election board is the institution in charge of overseeing election. From an organizational point of view, the Election Commission has numerous types of obligations and responsibilities which change from one country to the next. For the electoral management body to be able to exercise its power freely and equally, it must be free from legal constraints, including the freedom to act and make decisions in connection with the role and obligation that have been assigned to it. All concerns pertaining to the performance of function are under the jurisdiction of the EC. The EC is responsible for the YDPA. The remuneration of members of the Election Commission panel is not subject to debate in the House. Remuneration for members will be paid into a separate fund, which is especially established for this purpose in the Election Commission Act of 1957. The YDPA is in charge of all aspects pertaining to performing function on behalf of an organization.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. So, okay, komen madam, okay. Content, okay. Sebab macam orang kata dia tidak ada, baguslah dia bukanlah cakap pasal election process. Dia bercakap betul-betul pasal EC. So that's good. Banyak benda yang kita tak tahu, kita belajar. Cuma itulah dari segi presentation tu, kita harap boleh improve lagi. So maknanya cakap betul biar bagi kita yakin sikit lah. Alright, so madam akan beri markah. Sekejap. Okay, ni election process kita letak sini. Move. Then election commission. Okay, so 3 orang juga. Alright, so introduction. Okay lah. So, So introduction is good. Okay, concept pun. Okay. Transition tu macam sekejap sana sekejap sini kan. Taklah maksudnya media macam tengoklah juga. Conclusion pun. Okay. Tapi secara general taklah. Okay, media bagi ikut lah. Right. So 5, 10, 14, 10, 14, 20. 21 lah. Conclusion media bagi 4 lah. Okay. So Media harap kamu boleh buat yang terbaik lah untuk apa? Report pula. Okay. Dah ada. Okay. Okay. Alright. So ni election commission. So lengkap lah. Okay. Presentation kita pada hari ini. So kalau tengok kabinet, okay, dah ada report. Okay, so madam akan, okay, ni pun dah ada report. So ni draft. Masuk dalam tu semua dah. Okay, dah ada report. Pun dah ada report terus siap-siap. So, okay, tak apalah sebab dari segi okay, judiciary mana? Judiciary punya report. Dia baru draft ni. Ya? Okay, kena hantar segera. Ni ada dah. Okay. Alright. Okay, so judiciary je tak hantar lagi. Right, so Medan nak harap semua hantarlah sebab Medan dah nak stop dah. Okay, membuat ni. Okay, semua sampai sini dulu. Okay, Medan akan letak recording ni dalam YouTube. So malam ni tengoklah. Okay, kalau kamu semua boleh view kita buat kelas tapi secara ramai. Okay semua, Assalamualaikum.